I'm interested in the comments made by Mr. Brady because he said we could be putting more money into small business, and we do indeed in the COVID package, around $300 billion. And I think it's important to note, Madam Speaker, that that brings it to about almost $1 trillion since March 27th, 28th, when the President signed the CARES Act, about $950 billion for small business, nearly $1 trillion. Very important. Small business is the heart of our economy. What could be more optimistic for anyone to do but to follow their dreams, start a small business, create jobs, create wealth, carry capital? So important. We see the importance of that to the tune of about $1 trillion, just under $1 trillion in these past several months. But if you want to talk about job creation, I hope the gentleman will join us when we go forward to do state and local, our healthcare workers, honoring our heroes. They're at risk of losing their jobs. While they risk their lives to save lives, they may lose their jobs, and over 1 million of them have. We're talking about healthcare workers. We're talking about police. They are at risk of losing their jobs because of the failure of the Republican side of the aisle to support funds for state and local government to honor our heroes. We want to honor them. When we cheer them, we applaud them. Let's give them pay. Let's let them have job security. Let's give them PPE, the equipment that they need to do their jobs. So if we want to talk about saving jobs or growing jobs for the purpose the distinguished gentleman from Texas mentioned, how we're going to focus on the distribution and the administration of the vaccine. Where do you think that happens but in city and county and state hospitals in large measure, by healthcare workers in those places, wherever it is distributed on an individual basis. But they are the heart of the matter. And that is why we need to go forward with another bill that invests in our state and local governments, not to talk about government, but to talk about services, healthcare services, education, transportation, making our lives possible, making our very existence possible by what they do. And without them, how do we function? So again, let's create jobs, let's save jobs, let's grow jobs by administering this vaccine as fairly, as equitably as possible, and free to everyone in our country, because if we're not protected, none of us is, unless all of us are protected, none of us is protected. So this $2,000, which thank you for bringing to the floor on Christmas Eve, was roundly rejected by a Republican that asked for unanimous consent. This could already be exist as a law if that had happened, but it didn't. So now today we have another chance. Some of the Republicans said, oh, if they really wanted that, they would have called for a vote that day. That wasn't true. It's important to note that was a pro forma session, and you had to have the consent of the Republicans to bring the bill to the floor. They withheld their consent. So here we are today in a legislative day where we just act with the majority to bring the legislation to the floor. I hope it will enjoy a strong bipartisan support. The President of the United States has put this forth as something that he wants to see in terms of, and part of his signing the legislation yesterday. I hope that view will be shared by the Republicans in the Senate, because we will pass this bill today, either under suspension or under a rule where it just requires a majority vote. Under suspension, as you know, 2/3 vote requires a large number of Republican votes, which I hope we will have, because I do think that the American people would love to see that unity on their behalf. We are a consumer economy. Putting money into the hands of the American people is a boost to our economy. Not much. This isn't a big stimulus package. The COVID bill is a emergency supplemental, but this piece will make it will make it something very important to growing sustaining our economy. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the work that your committee did. Brandon, thank him, and the others for putting in the dependent clause, that people are, if otherwise you had 16 years and under would get the direct payment. But I mean, as a mother of 5 and grandmother of 9, I know that children are dependent after 16 years of old, especially if they're still in school. And there are others who are dependent because of, for one thing and another, some physical challenges that they may have in life. Who knows what goes on in a family? But nonetheless, if they are dependent, they will be receiving the direct payment. Another important boost for America's working families, another important boost for our economy as we go forward. So let me again thank the chairman for his work. It's a simple vote. We put more money. Our goals have been crush the virus, honor our heroes who help us crush the virus, and put money in the pockets of the American people. Today, we would be doing that right now. Legislation will be a lifeline for millions of Americans. It improves on the previously passed relief bill by including dependents, ensuring that families with children in colleges, adults living with disabilities, or elderly family members can also receive relief. Republicans have a choice. Vote for this legislation or vote to deny the American people the bigger paychecks they need. To reject this would be in denial of the economic challenges that people are facing, and it would deny them, again, the relief they need. And with that, I urge a strong bipartisan vote for the aptly named Cash Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from California, the Speaker of the House, yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves, and the gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Madam Speaker, may I just inquire how much time is remaining?
The gentleman from Texas has 9 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Massachusetts has 3.5 minutes remaining.
So, Madam Speaker, we are prepared to close. And with that, I would yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman from Texas is yielding himself such time as he may consume. The gentleman is recognized.
First, let me congratulate the Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Neal, for working so closely together on our bipartisan priorities. Ending surprise medical bills when you go to the ER or you have a scheduled medical procedure. Ensuring, starting at the end of next year for the first time, when you go to that doctor's procedure, you have a true and honest bill in advance of that will be so crucial for so many patients. And I also thank the chairman for working so closely in a bipartisan way on the COVID tax relief provisions and the first reforms of our temporary tax provisions in 5 years. So, Chairman Neal, I applaud your work and enjoy working with you. The previous speaker talked about essential workers, our firefighters, our healthcare workers, others, manufacturers who've done such an amazing job. We had an opportunity earlier this year to help them. President Trump, in his executive order, proposed a payroll tax holiday for nearly 5 months for these workers. That would have meant for those essential workers, that firefighter, that hospital worker, that nurse, that they would have kept, a family of 4 would have kept an extra $5,000 in their paycheck throughout the holidays. If we really wanted to help essential workers, our Democrat friends would not have blocked that payroll tax holiday and would have adopted our bill to make sure that those taxes, payroll taxes, were forgiven. As for state and local governments, they too, even though I disagree with many of the decisions, deserve our thanks. And thankfully, because this was the most rapid labor market recovery following a crisis in history, and we recovered more than half the jobs we've lost. State and local revenues this year are almost even, down a mere less than 1%. Thank goodness Congress came together in the CARES Act to provide more than $150 billion to those state and local governments to be able to address these needs and continue to function. I will tell you, too, that, again, I speak only for myself. The best way to help struggling families is to get them back to work. The best way to save our Main Street is to give our small and medium-sized businesses more help than we have. This bill does neither. I think it is correct when the earlier speaker said this is not a stimulus. It is not. And it does nothing to help get people back to work. I worry that as we spend another nearly $500 billion so hastily, that we're not targeting this help to the very the Americans who are struggling the most and need that help. I will also point out that, as I said earlier, Congress has come together to provide a family of 4 with one unemployed parent now just a little short of $40,000 of federal money in their traditional state unemployment because we knew they were struggling. Now is the time to get them back to work. That is my personal objection to this bill. I urge Congress to pause for a moment, to assess the vaccinations over the next few months or year, to determine where next we need to weigh in, if at all, on this recovery as we continue to work together to defeat this virus. With that, Madam Speaker, I am honored to be here today, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas yields the balance of his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm prepared to close, and I want to acknowledge the good efforts of Ranking Member Brady on the energy front in the tax package as well. A series of compromised measures. He did a terrific job, I think it's fair to say, on surprise billing, and not to mention USMCA. Those were very substantive accomplishments that the Ways and Means Committee led on in the 116th Congress. He mentioned that, as he was closing, he mentioned that this measure he did not want to see treated as stimulus, and he's right. This is not about stimulus. This is about stability. This is about building a bridge for those people who are really hurting as we turn the page on this year. This is about those who are wondering how they're going to make the next rental payment, sustenance for the American family, how they might repair that automobile that sits in the garage idle because they couldn't afford it. That's what this is really about this evening. I started with Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol and the lessons of Jacob Marley. But let me conclude with a very simple description in the epic America. When asked what it was that set America apart from the rest of the world, it was suggested it was a habit of the heart, a kindness and a decency and a goodness. And let me close the debate on that basis and urge passage of the Cash Act and $2,000 for the American people. I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts yields back his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 9051? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, purposes of the gentleman from Texas rise.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the conference, I ask for the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Section 3 of House Resolution 965, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed.